As Derrick mentioned to you, I'm an orthopedic surgeon by training. I'm an orthopedic trauma surgeon, particularly I deal with broken bones and car accidents. And this is my chosen profession prior to getting into the White House Fellowship, which I was able to do in 2003, 2004, 2005, or 2003, 2004. And as Derrick told you, as they selected me for the fellowship, I was incredibly excited. So here I am, a young guy finishing my trauma fellowship, ready to go into Washington to make health policy. And I'm thinking I'm going to HHS, I'm going to all these other places. And I interviewed with a number of different, and if you're not familiar with the process, you are chosen, you get to interview with some cabinet secretaries, and they look at you, and they measure you, and they see how you do, and they see if you fit into the department. Here I put my rank list. Department of Energy, Department of Health and Human Services, and then Department of the Interior, and I said, I don't even know what they do. And then lo and behold, 3 months prior to the fellowship, I get my assignment, and it's the Department of the Interior. And I remember turning to my wife and saying to her, I don't know what these guys do. I don't even know what Smokey the Bear does. Smokey the Bear, of course, is with the Forest Service and part of the Interior. So I go and I'm freaking out about this assignment. I said, I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to do. But I can tell you in retrospect, not only after that first year, but now 5 years later, that it was probably one of the most fortunate things that's ever happened in my life. In that it engaged me in a process and an understanding, I think, of public lands, public land management, the interface between health and recreation, and I've continued kind of my interest in this kind of thing that has brought, I think, somewhat of a unique perspective, I think, to the role that public lands play. So I wanted to talk a little bit today about recreation public health. Many of you who I've seen again today after 5 years, who I first met when I was a fellow, some of this will be redundant in the sense that I've talked about this before, but part of the reason why I wanted to do this is so that we can see where we've come from in just a short period of time, where we are now, and perhaps what are the next steps and what we can do. Let's see, so just to review, and this is going to focus a lot on children. At the time that we were going through the process, this is before Richard Loop's book on the nature deficit disorder, all of those things. But the focus lately in the last couple of years has really been on trying to get kids engaged back in the outdoors. There's a health benefit that's been increasingly recognized, but the bottom line is we recognize there is a link between inactivity and the potential for recreation in the outdoors. I think everybody in this room agrees with that. And oftentimes I find myself in these audiences really speaking to, preaching to the choir because you all get it. But at the same time, how many of you folks are physicians who see their patients every day, other than Stephen and Daphne, right? So in many ways, speaking to you, you guys get it. The ones who don't get it are the ones who are in my peer group who are physicians. And so how do we bridge the gap between the two? So review some of the facts we know. We know that the United States is facing an epidemic of chronic disease, much of which is preventable and can be directly linked to physical inactivity. This is an advertisement or a public service announcement from the American Heart Association. Don't supersize, right? Don't supersize your child. Review of childhood obesity. We know that in the last 30 years, since 1976, it's been dramatically increasing among preschoolers, children, and adolescents, to all the way to the point where by 2010 we expect 20% of all children to be obese in this country. It's a dramatic thing. It's really remarkable. And this was predicted in June of 2000, a cover page from Newsweek, Fat for Life, 6 million kids are overweight. And it's interesting, when this first came out, I looked at it and said, wow, that's very interesting. But then when I go back and look at some of these older presentations I had, we're now 10 years later, right? This is the prediction from 10 years ago. So I wonder where we are now. And by 2010, that's now up to 20% of kids are obese. So the predictions were actually correct. Teen obesity, of course, another public service announcement. Here's some other facts we know. 95% of the $1.4 trillion spent on healthcare goes to direct medical services. When you get into a car accident in Jacksonville, you come to my hospital, I fix you. These are direct medical services. But 5% is allocated to preventing disease and promoting healthy healthy lifestyles. Right? This may change with the emphasis on prevention these days, but this is really kind of the numbers that are out there now. And obesity, as most of us recognize, may be the most important public health issue of the 21st century. Right? And it's surpassing tobacco in terms of a preventable cause of illness. Ultimately, what's crazy about the issue of childhood obesity is it's really ultimately very simple. If you really boil it down, we're orthopedic surgeons, Stephen will appreciate this, we're very simple people. broken bone, we fix it. And so this is what it is for me. It's a simple equation. It's high intake plus low activity gives you obesity, or at least leads to obesity. So here's a, so can you guys hear this? Can you hear this?
Put a microphone up to it.
Obviously a public service announcement, a commercial, very well done, I think, a professional commercial done by my own academy of orthopedic surgeons about 2 or 3 years ago as we began to look at the obesity issue. But I think that what's important to keep in mind is we all get that. That's great, right? Kids, shouldn't be using the clapper or whatever it is to try to their lights at night. But ask yourselves, and in the realm that you all kind of revolve in, what's missing in this equation? Right? You've just heard the doctors talk about obesity, right? And we're here to talk about what your role is in public health. So did you see anything in there that talked about being outside? Did you see anything in there that talked about physical activity other than the negative example of showing what not to do? Right? And so as folks who are in the recreation world or in the outdoors, involved in the outdoors, what is the potential that you could have seen in that message? Right? What is the medical message? Well, you can get strong bones as you walk, you can get better long-term health, etc. And the Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons actually support that notion. But what's missing is we didn't tell them where to go. Right? And so as the issues of public health, obesity have become more and more of interest to the public, we've drawn lines of connections between what you need to do and the medical message. And I'll show you some examples of what that medical message is really ultimately. It is ultimately eat less and exercise, right? I'm a simple guy. This is what they tell me to do, and this is what I try to do. At the same time, you ask yourselves, what is exercise? What does exercise mean to a child? What does it mean to most of us? Exercise is a process whereby the body performs work of a demanding nature in a clinically controlled environment, meaningfully loading the muscular structures to stimulate a growth mechanism within a minimum time. Are you kidding? Right? If you recall, about a year ago, Shaq, remember, he did this great thing in Florida. He did I think a 6 or 12-week program with children to deal with the issue of childhood obesity. And he brought these kids out and he became their personal trainer. And he did you see those kids? They hated it. They couldn't stand it. Look what these kids are doing. Right? Talk to any 12-year-old who happens to be a little bit overweight and ask them if they want to jump in. Who's going to raise their hand and jump in on that? Right? So this is the medical message: eat less, exercise. Right? And most of them are like, yeah, you're right. So the bottom line is we know that any activity above sedentary is beneficial, right? We know that there are certain goals we have to reach, but getting out of the chair is better than sitting in the chair. But the exercise message lingers in most of the medical minds, and it's most of the public health messaging. And this is an article from 2004 when people were really trying to promote issues of activity. Instead of saying, get outside, they said, I'm going to write you a prescription to exercise. And they're like, oh my God, you're kidding me, I got to go to the gym. When instead, what they should have been saying is, I'm going to write you a prescription to get outside, right? Okay, well, at least that was my prescription.